recent interview, you said you wanted to work on the new album, follow-up to Surgical Steel, since last year, but you aren't exactly able to work on it on the road. Do you have any pre-written song ideas that might possibly make it to the new album?
Absolutely, yeah. I guess whatever it was I said in that interview, which naturally got removed from the interview as being the main subject matter. No, I mean, I guess in essence what I was saying was I went into 2015 assuming, oh, it's time we looked into doing some new material, you know. But I guess that was, you know, a little naive on my part because the music business doesn't really seem to work that way anymore. In my mind, you should be doing an album every 2 years because that's what I was used to from the old days, but very few people do now. But yeah, Dan and myself, we got together at the start of the year, really early on, and worked on a bunch of tunes, and it was sounding really good. But then, you know, the diary started getting full again, so we haven't even touched that material since.
How would you say your songwriting process is? Is there a lot of like tapping out certain parts and composing harmonies, or is it more jam-based?
I don't read or write music, and I don't do tablature either, so you just have to remember it. Or if I'm in a rush, you know, I've come up with something, but I haven't had enough time to like sort of program it into my brain and my fingers, I'll quickly record it, you know, just on a little tape recorder or something. So that's kind of how it all starts. It always starts with just a bunch of riffs, and then we just hammer it into shape over a period of time.
When you released Surgical Steel, did you expect it to be that well received?
No, definitely not, because we felt confident about the quality of the album, but our expectations in terms of the response to it were very low. We thought the hardcore Carcass people would be very up for it, and we figured probably otherwise it would be kind of ignored, you know, as kind of an irrelevant new album by this old act. So it's great to be wrong, you know. It seemed to just reach a whole other load of people, including, you know, properly new listeners. So yeah, I mean, God, we were delighted. Yeah.
When I first heard the album, I immediately thought that 1985, oh, this reminds me of Bryan Me.
Wow, well, that's a big compliment, thank you. Yeah, well, I can kind of see where you're coming from there, because he did a lot of that kind of thing where you're overdubbing, you know, several guitars into, you know, build a big harmony. You know, it's not just a two-part harmony, it's a three. But yeah, that was just something, it was really nice how it came together, because Jeff had heard that little intro thing on a very early rehearsal tape from the earliest attempt at Carcass in 1985. So that's why he wanted to call this piece 1985. But after that, we, you know, kind of our imaginations took over, and we thought, why don't we do this as just a guitar piece? So there's no drums on it, no bass. And we just stacked it right up. So as well as the harmony line you hear in three parts, underneath it, I can't remember how many guitars I recorded, but I recorded the chords almost more like in a piano kind of way. So I really stacked them up, and they just have a big spread from top to bottom kind of thing. Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me how I did it now, but it was fun at the time, yeah.
What was it like touring with Slayer and Testament recently?
Brilliant, yeah. We just can't say enough good things about Slayer, because with a band of that size, you would expect not for them to be horrible to you, but you would maybe expect to not be treated particularly well, because you're just this little band and they're huge, and, you know, they have this devoted following and a very significant history. So you kind of think, well, yeah, we probably won't get treated too well on this trip, but we're just grateful to be invited. But from day one, goodness me, the treatment was just fantastic. The band was super cool as people. The crew were just really, really outstanding. You know, great people, fantastic work ethic. Yeah, it was just brilliant. And yeah, Testament, you know, also lovely people, and playing with those two bands definitely, it gives us a kick up the arse, because you can't do a half-baked show when you share a stage with those people. So it was a lot of incentive for us to you do your best anyway, but it more so with those audiences, because so many people hadn't heard us. We had to prove something to them, and try and avoid getting flack, because I was expecting people to throw things at us, but only one member of our band had stuff thrown at him, and it wasn't me, and it wasn't Jeff, and it wasn't Dan.
How is it different when you're an open band than when you're headlining, other than the obvious? You get a shorter set, there's smaller crowds. Like, what differences are there that aren't so obvious to someone who's outside?
Oh, you mean from headlining in a situation like this to supporting?
Yes.
There's loads of differences. I think most people in bands would probably say the same thing with regards to fun. It can be a lot more fun supporting, because you get your little segments of work out of the way nice and early, and you can enjoy the rest of the evening. It works quite well with drinking, because headlining, that's a bit of a tricky one. You want to have enough to drink to sort of be nice and loose for the gig, but you don't want to be completely wrecked. So you have to be careful not to overstep the mark. What else? I suppose if you do one of these package tours and there's 4 bands, sometimes it can feel, I don't really feel it right now, but definitely say when we were doing stuff with Obituary and Napalm and Co, there's an element of pressure almost, like, oh god, it's a long day for everyone involved with this show, and it's a long night for the audience, and by the time you go on, you're going to have to be worth seeing, after all of the things they've witnessed already. That's an element. I really love playing short sets, if I'm honest, because you don't have to pace yourself or pace the set. It's just let's go out there and just flay people for 45 minutes or whatever it might be. With the longer sets, it's maybe more of a challenge to try and balance it out, and you never get it quite right, but you just do your best, I guess.
Artwork was a bit of a style change compared to Necroticism and the other albums before it. What was the initial reaction when that album first came out, and did you expect it to be one of your most popular and influential albums at the time?
At the time, we were very pleased with it, but the reaction wasn't that good, if I'm honest. I've said this before, but Japan was the one country where that record was actually received well at the time and sold well. And I think in certain other territories, I hate using that word territories, I should just say countries, it's like music industry speak. It wasn't, I'm trying to think of a good example. USA would be one, actually. A lot of people were telling us it was a big sellout at the time, I still think the album's heavy, but the way people were talking about it, it was like Def Leppard or something. Not that there's anything wrong with Def Leppard, but you know what I mean. In the underground thing, they were like, well, this is just a very commercial release, and you've lost your edge. So it was quite nice that as the years went by to see it getting this following, and I suppose having a little bit of an impact, in terms of I've heard bands that sound like they've maybe been listening to that record. It's good. There's a time and a place for everything. Not everybody gets instant recognition for something they do at that time. If you get any recognition ever, you should just be grateful and just enjoy it whenever it pops up.
Right. How do you feel about bands listing you as an influence?
Oh, it's very flattering. Sometimes you can hear it in the music, and then other times you really can't, and you're thinking, wow, it's nice that they've mentioned us, but I just don't hear any similarities at all. But I think we've got fairly good perspective on this, because it's not like we've influenced as many bands as, say, Venom or Slayer. So it's nice that we've had our little part to play in all of this, but there are so many bands that have achieved things that we will never get to. So swings and roundabouts.
When Carcass first disbanded, did you guys ever think you would get back together at some point?
I definitely did not. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just too immature to conceive of something like that. I've never been good at looking at really long term at things. You know, it's like I always think about now and the next few months or whatever it might be. I'm not one of those people who can look years ahead. So I really believed when we broke up, that was it forever. And I think maybe with the way Jeff's mind works, he might have had a little bit more awareness than me. If it wasn't at that time, it definitely within a few years, I think he was already starting to think about these things. And you know, Michael Amott, as in Arch Enemy Mike, he was the same way. I think, you know, he started to realise, yeah, there would be lots of interest if this band came back, and you know, that put it all in motion.
What was the final driving force that inspired you guys to reunite?
Well, it had been there for some time with those two, with Jeff and
Right.
Mike. And the problem was me, really, up until that point, because I didn't genuinely believe that there was that much demand for us to play again. And then, you know, they convinced me, and then it was a case of like, does this feel good playing? You know, because I'd been playing a very different style of music in the in-between period, and yeah, it just came straight back. It was like, God, I've missed this. You know, it's so much fun, and it's like a challenge. I mean, you never play a perfect gig, or I mean, I definitely don't. There's always things you know you've messed up, and it sort of drives you to try and get it right the next time, and then you'll mess up a different segment of music or whatever. But yeah, it was all really very positive, like musically and personally. When we got back together, it was fun, which is, I guess, why anyone does a band to begin with.
How do you feel about people saying they pursued careers in the medical field because of your music?
Amazed. Yeah, I'm just amazed by that. Yeah, because I mean, you know, we don't know the first thing about that stuff. We're just writing crazy lyrics for the sake of it. Yeah, it's very nice, I guess. Yeah.
So none of you has a medical background whatsoever?
Not at all. No. A long time ago, a British journalist for the NME paper, Stephen Wells, no longer with us, I believe, sadly, but he's the guy who kind of started this rumour that we were all qualified medically. He was just trying to be interesting, you know, it was for the piece, you know, but it was a complete crap, you know. There's only one person in the band who did further education, and that was Ken, and that was ecology, so it was pretty far from what people thought it was, you know.
Are you still in contact with Michael Amott or any
Yeah.
of the other former members?
Absolutely, yeah. With Michael, it's very sporadic because he's very busy and we're fairly busy. But you know, we run into each other on occasion. The last time we saw him, it was a really good laugh. You know, we all got together in whoever's designated party room it was in the hotel and just had a few drinks and just behaved like idiots, like like the old days. It was fun. I'm in contact with Ken all the time. Like, you know, we're texting each other every week, you know, several times, and I go and see him when I can. He lives like in a very rural part of, I guess it's in Nottinghamshire. It's near Newark, anyway, in the Midlands. Yeah, you know, it's nice to keep with, you know, you've got this great thing in common, you know, this past, and you went through things together. So it's nice to, you know, still be mates and, you know, keep up to date with what everyone's doing.
Great. How has the music industry changed since Carcass began, and how have those changes affected you?
My answer would probably be the same as many people's would be. Obviously, the internet has changed everything. I think we're only now just trying to like adapt to that. But Carcass has been super lucky. I mean, our record sales now are pretty much on par with what they were back in the 90s. Not everybody can say that, but I guess it tells you a lot about the metal audience. You know, people take the music very seriously and they want to actually own the artifact. I mean, that's how I am. You know, I mean, I don't call myself a record collector, but I've got a lot of records, and I never stop buying records because it's not enough. I mean, I don't want to just listen to something on my phone or whatever. So that's a big one. I'm trying to think what else. Well, the press side of things, that's an interesting one because we hardly ever did much press in the old days, and now, around the time of the album, I did more interviews in a day than I did for the entire period of the Hard Work album. And we're still doing them now, like we haven't got a new album out. And the other stuff, Jeff is the business mind of the band. He takes care of everything of that nature, and he would give a far fuller answer on this one because all of that stuff is altered too.
How do you balance Gentleman's Pistols with Carcass?
It's generally been very easy because, well, it's not a great thing, but especially lately, Gentleman's Pistols hasn't had many offers in terms of gigs. So it's kind of, it's been a very quiet time for the band, which is kind of frustrating because I thought that last record was really good. I can say this because I didn't write any of the material, I just played some lead on it, but I really like Atco's songs, and I just think what he does is underrated and needs more attention. But you can't force these things, like we were saying about there being a time and a place for things. Sometimes something doesn't really hit at the time you want it to. But there was a point a couple of years back when we had some super cool offers of tours. Bands you wouldn't expect actually sort of invited us to tour with them, and like we supported TerrorVision, which probably isn't a huge name here, but it's very big in the UK, and The Answer and stuff like that. Loads of bands, different genres, like from like almost the poppy end of rock to like stoner bands and everything in between. That was a really great time, but I think at some point some of those offers just kind of dried up. I don't know, maybe we had a very lucky couple of years and now we're experiencing the other side of the coin, I don't know. But generally the two bands haven't stepped on each other's toes. Carcass is, needless to say, my main thing and takes up huge amounts of time, but I love playing with Gents. That's just a very, very enjoyable band to be a member of.
How did your gig with Angel Witch come along?
The short version is I'd always been a fan. Like, that was one of the big records for me as a child, really. The Angel Witch album. I held it in the same esteem as as an Iron Maiden or a Saxon or a Motorhead or whatever. And then spin forward many years. A friend of mine was playing bass in Angel Witch, and I think they had some kind of issue with their then second guitarist, and they approached me, and absolutely I wanted to do it. It was one hell of a buzz. Playing that material next to Kevin. The first rehearsal in particular, I can't recall the last time I had so much fun practicing. It was like I was transported back to being 12. I was like, I would never have guessed I'd get the chance to do this. And Kevin still sings and plays the way he did back then. He's very, very into his music. This is not a guy who's like, oh, should I do this or not? Maybe people want me to play, but he has to play. He's that kind of person. It was a very, very fun thing to do. But eventually I had to step out because I could see, looking at the calendar, oh crap, some of my Carcass commitments are going to affect them. So I said, look, you should try and find a new guitar player so nothing gets, blown out or whatever.
If the schedule permitted, would you help them out again?
Yeah, it's just great material to play. And again, talking about challenges, some of it's actually quite difficult to do. There's all these nuances that I didn't hear when I was listening to the album on headphones, and then face to face I'm seeing Kevin play it and I'm realizing I got that completely wrong. So that was really nice because it just keeps you on your toes, never assume you know what you're doing, because often you don't. I didn't anyway. Yeah.
Would you ever tour with Firebird again?
Part of me would love to, actually. I think the circumstances would need to be right, because it would take a while to get that thing up and running again, because it never really had the proper chance, if you know what I mean. Because everyone's living in different locations. We hardly ever practiced, and if you don't practice, there's a limit to how good you'll be. I mean, if you've got a drummer like Ludwig, he's just an astonishing musician, so it's always going to be of a certain quality level. But for me, it was a bit dodgy, because I had no vocal experience, and on top of that, singing and playing at the same time that was a bit of a struggle. But I kind of enjoyed the challenge of it, and I felt like it helped me as a guitar player, because you are very exposed in a three-piece. You can't kind of coast or take it easy. I love the improvising thing. With three people, you can quickly, change the dynamic and jam a bit. And so yeah, if there's a way to, I'd definitely be up for it, because it's strange how many people mention it now. When we were actually active, no one seemed to ask me about it, or even turn up to the gigs. So who knows? Yeah.
How close are you with Napalm, Dad?
Well, I mean, we're friends. Again, it's a bit like the Michael thing. We run into each other occasionally. Shane would be the main person, because he's the only guy in Napalm that I was actually in the band with at that time, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I mean, everyone would say this. Shane's just a sweetheart. He's a lovely bloke, and he's very, very sincere about his music. They're all good people, Barney's hysterically funny. I mean, some of it comes across on stage, but behind the scenes, he can. When he's in the right frame of mind, he's a very funny man.
Would you consider rejoining them for a show or a tour?
I think it would be very difficult for me to get back into that. I'll be honest, because they asked me to play a song with them live, and it was like I was a bit. I don't know if I can do this, in terms of, because we play fast with Carcass, but it's a different vibe. So anyway, I just had a crack at it because they kept asking me, and it was definitely fun to do. But I don't think I could actually nail a set with that band. I really don't think I'd be up to the job. I'm just playing too differently now.
Right.
Yeah.
When Jeff broke his foot a few months ago, how did you have to modify your guys' workflow?
We just didn't, because we had dates left on that tour, and I mean, looking back, he initially just thought he'd sprained it or something, So the next day, he just went on stage hobbling. He didn't go to hospital for a long time. It was I think it was another day still before he decided, okay, maybe I'd have this looked at. And it was fractured in 3 places. It was pretty bad. So yeah, we just finished the rest of the dates with him sitting, and it was kind of awkward. I mean, I felt for him, because you could see how much discomfort he was in. Yeah.
How do you feel about the bands that you guys are touring with? Did you have any input in choosing those bands?
Yeah. Specifically Jeff, really, because as I said, he's kind of the business guy, the manager, really. I mean, let me think about this carefully. Yeah, Night Demon, that was definitely his choice. He'd seen him play live and he really loved it, so he'd been championing them for a while. Ghoul, I think that was a mutual thing between us and our friend Alejandro, who works with us. They seemed just like a good choice. And I can't remember how Crowbar came up, but it was presented to us quite early. And of course, we were very aware of the band and their history. And, we already knew Kirk and stuff. So that was very easy. And we knew it would be a good combination in terms of we don't sound anything like each other. Both bands are heavy, but stylistically so different.
Right.
So it's quite nice when you play back to back and the audience gets something completely opposite. Well, not opposite, but drastically different in the space of an hour or two.
I read one of your previous interviews that you guys had intended to be on the recent Megadeth tour, but it fell through.
Maybe. I mean, I remember that coming up. But the way I recall, I mean, my memory's terrible, but like, the thing I remember is we were about to get a support slot on a Megadeth tour, and as that fell through, a support slot came up on that Slayer tour. And we knew we were going to lose money doing that, but we had to do it. You know, it's like, for every person in the band, it was a big deal because we all love Slayer, and you know, it was a very good opportunity for a band of our stature. So, yeah.
Do you listen to any current metal bands much at all?
No, unless, you know, we're out doing something like this. I'm the one person in the band that doesn't really keep up. Out of everybody, Dan would be the best at that. I mean, he's, you know, always up to date with whatever the latest power violence band is, or whatever the genre's called, you know. Yeah, I mean, I'm always listening to music, but I'm just kind of ploughing my own furrow, the stuff that excites me. I still like metal music a lot, but it is the music of the past. I mean, there's some killer groups out now, and some of them are very, very strong players. It's just, I guess, given my age, it's not likely to mean as much to me as, like, I don't know, the first Merciful Fate album, or, you know, or Raven, or Savage, or whoever. But like, but yeah, I mean, it's always an eye opener when you see a band like Ghoul, who I'd never actually heard before the tour. You know, they have the you know, deliberately gimmicky kind of stage show that makes people laugh, really. But then the music's very good, and it's really catchy. So I like that, you know, just every time we do one of these things, I get educated about a new band, or more, you know, maybe several bands.
I just had one last question about how you became a guitarist. Like, which band, which album inspired you to pick up the instrument and play?
There would be several, but if I had to just pick one record, it would be Motorhead's The Golden Years EP. I mean, it's just a 4-track EP from, I think it's like 80? Anyway, but yeah, it's live, and Fast Eddie Clarke, I just really liked his playing. I mean, it's real meat and potato stuff. It's not what you call flashy, but I just like the feel and the tone of it, and I still do, you know. At that time, it seemed to me like Motorhead was the very coolest band on earth. Everything about it was great. You thought every member was fantastic in his own way. They didn't sound like anybody else. Yeah, even now when I hear that record, it sounds the same to me. I get the same vibe off it I did at the time. So that's probably the biggest one. But there was loads of things around that time, you know, Jimi Hendrix, Rory Gallagher, Deep Purple. But I think that record in particular, like looking at the sleeve, listening to it, going, I would love to do that. You know, didn't know if I was capable. I just wanted to try it. You know, and at that age, you're too young to take a knockback. You know, someone says, "Oh, you sound like shit on guitar." You just don't care when you're 13 or something. So it's good to get started early when you've got a thick skin.